Alright, so today we're going to be installing a brand new 90% furnace. I already started by shutting the breaker off, but I haven't tested here yet. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to make sure we test for power. Alright, so what we're doing here, Juan and I, we're going to verify we have the right breaker, because even though it was labeled, sometimes they're mislabeled, we can't really trust it. So I have a little tester pen here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have Juan turn the breaker back on. Go ahead, Juan. I have him on the phone.
Okay, it's on.
Okay. All right, so I'm have power here. Go ahead and shut it off.
Okay.
All right, power's off. All right, so we just verified that's the right breaker, so now we're ready to dive into all the electrical. Another thing you can do with verifying the electric, it's basically called a 3-point test. When you test for power and you have no power there, you can always go to another live wire, like an extension cord like this. And I have power there, go back. That's basically testing the pen. So what we did before was we tested to make sure we have the right breaker, and now I was testing the pen. So just keeping things safe. And now we're ready to start tearing into this. So we're pulling out of York and putting in a Goodman. Not sure how I feel about that, but it is what it is. So what we're gonna start doing is I'm gonna have Juan over here start disconnecting the gas line. There's some PVC behind here with a condensate pump. That's for the condensate that the furnace generates. It's a 90%, so it makes water all the time, drains out down here. So we're gonna disconnect that. Have him disconnect the gas. I'm gonna start working over here on disconnecting the electric and the return. All right, so you go ahead and get started on that. So what I'm looking at here, Juan, is this is the inducer motor, you know that, right? And that's where our exhaust goes. So I know this is our exhaust pipe, so I'm gonna mark that off. So a lot of times when you change these units out, as you know, they reverse, so we may have to, this one I think we're good though. So I'm gonna mark this as exhaust. And this is our fresh air intake. So I'll mark that. And now we'll cut it loose. There we go. All right, so we got our flue pipes disconnected. We got our PVC drain disconnected, electricals disconnected. Now we gotta do the thermostat wires. So we got heating and cooling here. This is our AC coil. So we'll have 2 wires, thermostat wires coming in. All right, so we got our 2 wires here, the red and white. That's from our condensing unit outside. And that's hooked up to the Y and the common. So we'll cut that out. And we have our 4 thermostat wires for the go up to the thermostat. We have our green, that's our fan function on the thermostat. We got our red, which is our power, our white, which is our heating, and the yellow that is our cooling. So we got that disconnected. Pull those out. Alright, so now all we got to do is make sure this coil is well supported so that when we pull the furnace out, it doesn't fall down on us. Alright, so everything's disconnected. We're ready to pull the furnace out from underneath. I have the coil hung, return, everything, the electrical, PVC, everything's disconnected. So a lot of times getting these furnaces out, they don't always slide straight in and out like a lot of people make it seem. But in this particular case, what we're going to do is that this furnace is up on small blocks here, so we should be able to just pull those blocks out and have the furnace drop down, in which case it will be easy to slide right out. But if I didn't have blocks under here, if this was sitting right on the floor, what I would do sometimes I was use a flat bar like this with the edge on it. I would stick it underneath and just keep prying it and walk the furnace right out. But probably won't have to do that today. So what I'm going to do is we're going to slide these blocks out. So Juan, if you could try to lift up a little bit on the furnace. Okay. All right, let it down. Not gonna go easy. They got a screw in there. Sold on. Yeah. They screwed it from the inside. All right, so what these guys did when they originally installed this furnace is they had the coil out and they screwed the casing of the coil to the furnace from the inside. Now it's kind of not good for us because we don't want to get into removing the coil out because that's like an additional 3 hours of work. You have to pump the system down. It's a lot of work. So what we're going to do is that we just have one screw here. So we're just going to take a Sawzall with a metal blade and just cut that screw. All right. So obviously when you're making cuts like this, you want to make sure you're not cutting into the drain pan or copper or anything like that. But we're down below the coil itself, so it's just right there. That's it. Yep. All right, so here's our new Goodman furnace. What we're going to do is we're going to put that box underneath this unit. And the reason why we're doing that is because on these units, it's kind of hard to see here, but on this unit and the old unit, the blower is really close to the floor. So when we put that box underneath, we're lifting the unit up and we're allowing more air to flow in underneath the blower. And that really helps prolong the life of the unit. So we're going to do that now. We're going to flip this upside down, take the sheet of metal off the bottom, connect that box, and then we'll be ready to slide it in. We'll cut the return hole. Alright, so what we're doing now is we have to cut the hole for the return duct into the side of this. So this is a filter track that was existing. We're going to put that back in. So that's about the size of the hole we need. But what we're doing is over here, we measure how far this hole is up off the floor. All right, so I got about 3 inches there. I got a capping block here that we're gonna be sitting the unit on. So the very bottom of the unit is gonna be sitting right on this block where the hole is. So my goal is to get that down close to the bottom of the unit as I possibly can. So this way everything lines right up. So what I did was I went ahead and I laid it out exactly where I want it. I traced out where we're gonna cut, and now we're gonna go ahead and cut into it. Make sure our filter slides in. Beautiful. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put this back up on the blocks where it was. So I'm going to put 2 blocks in the back. You can see this here, but I'm going to place these blocks back here. And then we're going to slide the furnace in up on the blocks, lift it, slide the 2 front blocks in underneath. So let's see if we can get that in there. All right, so we got our unit in place. We got it up on the blocks. It's lined up with the coil. Our return lines up. We're just going to screw that back in. And basically what I'm looking at now is where the gas and the electric and all that stuff needs to be reconnected. So on this unit, we have the power connections on the left side here. I can move it over to the right. So what I'm going to do is we're going to move the power, we're going to move this box over to the other side here. Whenever you move something on a 90% furnace, you always have to make sure there's little plugs in here like this to kind of plug up the holes. Whenever you move something, you always have to make sure those plugs go into wherever. Basically, it has to be a sealed unit. You can't leave wide open holes. So these little knockout things here, you want to hold on to them. You want to make sure everything is sealed off. We're going to come across, this is our gas valve here. We're going to come down straight across, come right out here and reconnect our gas pipe here. We're going to do all that hard pipe. It's not code here to be using flexible pipe. We're not in an earthquake prone area or anything like that. And for our electric, we're just going to come right back off the box and in here. New switch, new outlet. That's going to be for our condensate pump. Hook up the flue pipe, the low voltage wiring, and get the PVC back in. We'll be ready to fire it up. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to let Juan start on the gas piping here. I'm going to start working on this return and maybe start a little bit of the wiring. So we got here, this is where the shut-off switch, the actual burner shut-off switch is going to go. We have our black wire here that's coming in from the electrical panel, and the white wire, the neutral, that's coming from our panel, as well as a ground. We have it grounded to the box. So what we're going to do is we're going to hook the ground up to the switch itself. Now I have this switch in the off position facing down. What I like to do is I like to take the line, which is the power coming from our panel, and I'm going to put that on the bottom terminal where the off switch is pointing. So this tells me where the power is stopping when it's off. Okay, we have our neutral wire. It's already tied in and going down to our outlet. So I'm going to take the black wire that's also going down to our outlet and eventually to the furnace. I'm going to tie that in up top. So basically the way I have it configured here is when it's off, it's pointing towards the power coming in, and when I turn it on, up, it's going to send the power to our load, which is our furnace, and the power is going to travel down to the outlet. And I'm going to take just a little bit of electrical tape, and I'm going to wrap these terminals so that they don't come into contact with the box or any other wiring. So it kind of helps prevent it from shorting out accidentally if someone's in there playing around with it. So as you can see, and then tuck our wires back in. That's it, our burner switch is done. So now we're going to move on to the outlet. What we got here, this is our power coming in for our power switch that we just wired in. We got our black, which is our hot, our white, neutral, and our ground wire. We also have our ground, neutral, and hot, and this is going back to inside the furnace. I already ran that, and I'll show you the hookup there later. And this is our ground wire, grounding directly down to the metal box. So whenever you're running metal boxes, you have to ground every single one of them. So we have the outlet here. So on this side of the outlet, we have a silver screw, and on the other side, we have a gold screw. So the gold is your hot, the silver is your neutral, and then we have the ground right here. So what I did was I added these wires to the plug off of the hot, the neutral, and the ground, because as I run power in from here, I don't want to run it through the plug. I just want the plug to take power off these lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this black wire, that's the load for the outlet, and I'm going to tie that right into all the other blacks here. So our power is going to be coming in on this black wire. It's going to go right to the black wire that feeds into our furnace, but it's also going to come off and go to the black wire for our outlet. So I'll tie those three together. Put a wire nut on there. And so there we have our path. Now we're going to do the same thing with all the whites, the neutrals. It's the same exact thing. So I'm going to tie all three of those whites together. And I'm just twisting these together with my linemans so they don't pull apart very easy. Put my wire nut on there. Alright, so now our hot and our neutral is done, and what we got to do is connect all our grounds together. Trim this down a little. Wire nut. And now we're all wired in. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get a black piece of electrical tape, cover those terminals up. And so now we're all set. We're not worried about the terminals touching any metal and grounding out. So I'm going to tuck these wires back in. And go ahead and put our plate on. Alright, so we're all done there. Now we're ready to wire it straight into the furnace. Alright, so here we have our black, white, and green. This is the power for our furnace. And we have a black, white, and green here that's coming back from our outlet down here. So we're just going to go green to green, black to black, white to white. Simple as that. And the rubber plug that I took out of there, I put it on the other side so that the unit stays sealed. That's it, all our high voltage is done. I'm just going to tuck this back into the box, like so, and we're going to put our cover on. So our electrical is done. The gas is already done as well. We have our valve, our shut-off valve here. We have the gas coming into the furnace, going to the gas valve, and we have a drip leg on here below a T. So when we finish the gas, what we do is we turn the gas on. We loosen the cap up down here. We loosen that cap up, let a little bit of gas out just to get the air out of the line. Then we tighten it back up again, and you always want to make sure you got a switch here on your gas valve. You want to make sure it's in the on position. So we turn that on, and now our high voltage and our gas is all hooked up. Now we're going to hook up our low voltage and start running our drain lines. Alright, so here we have our two thermostat wires coming in here. The red and white is for the condensing unit for the air conditioning. And we have a green, white, red, and yellow that's coming from our thermostat. We also have a blue on here, but where you don't need that, even though the customer has a Nest thermostat, that one doesn't need a common wire. So we're wrapping that back. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with my cooling. I'm going to take now on this particular unit, this is a Goodman. We have a two-stage cooling terminal, so we don't have just a Y, we have Y1 and Y2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little jumper like so, and I'm going to stick that in between Y1 and Y2. And what this does is when the unit is calling for cooling, because we don't have two-stage thermostats or anything like that, we want the air conditioning to always run in the second stage or the higher stage. So by putting this jumper in, we're just combining the first and second stage together to run consistently all the time at two stages. So I'm going to take the yellow. So I got my jumper between Y1 and Y2. I'm going to take my red from my condensing unit. I'm going to take the yellow from my thermostat, and I'm going to tie both of those into Y1. And so basically in cooling mode, the thermostat will receive power from the red wire that I'm going to hook up here in a minute. And on a call for cooling, it's going to connect the power inside the thermostat from the R terminal to the Y terminal. And then that power is going to come down along that yellow wire that's hooked up to the Y terminal, and it's going to power this Y1 terminal. And as it's powering the Y1 terminal, it's also going to send 24 volts out to the condensing unit outside, and that's going to close the contactor that'll allow the condensing unit to start up. It's also going to jump over to Y2, and that's going to make sure that this blower here is always running at the second stage cooling, because we don't have staged thermostat here. So the white wire coming back from the condensing unit. That's our common. So when the 24 volts goes out to the condensing unit to close the contactor in, it's going to come back on this white wire, and we're going to hook that up to common. So our common connection is right here next to our Y. So we're going to hook the white from the condensing unit right up in there. And that, okay, so we have our cooling, our 24 volts for the contactor and the condensing unit on the red, and the white is the common coming back from the condensing unit. So now we have our red, white, and green off of our thermostat. So what I'm going to do now, so our next terminal here, that's the G terminal, and I'm going to hook up the green wire to that. And basically what that is, it's just there's a function on your fan, on the thermostat, there's a function on your thermostat for the fan that allows you to set it to auto or on. And when you turn that little switch on your thermostat to on for the fan, it sends power down to this green wire, and all this does is run the blower motor right here and circulate the air through your home. So it's not activating heating or cooling, it's just running the blower itself. So if you ever install a Nest thermostat and you don't have enough wires, you can actually use that green wire as a common. You just disconnect it, put it on your common, and then hook common up to your thermostat with the green wire, and your heating and cooling system will still work. The blower will still turn on when it calls for heating or cooling. So I got that hooked up. Now I'm going to hook up to 24 volts. That's the power that sends 24 volts up to your thermostat. And when that 24 volts will always be up on the thermostat, waiting for the thermostat to call for heat or cooling. And that 24 volts will be sent to the heating or cooling wires depending on what the thermostat's calling for. So now what we have is our white, and I'm going to hook that up to W, and that's for our heating. And that's going to start up our 90% furnace. And that's it. Our low voltage wiring is done. Now when you open up these 90% furnaces, you're going to find a whole bag full of rubber hoses and fittings in it. When most of those hoses or anything are for a configuration where you might have this furnace laying on its side rather than straight up like this. So the only thing we really need is this kind of long hose right here. We're going to hook that up to, this is our trap for the condensate that comes out of our secondary heat exchanger. So when the furnace is running and the heat goes through the secondary heat exchanger, it cools it down so much it condenses and we actually get water. So this trap is where our water's coming out on our 90% furnace. We're going to hook this hose up and we're going to run it outside the furnace into a condensate pump. We're also going to use this little fitting that comes with the furnace inside that bag. And this is where we're going to hook the hose up and connect it to the side of the furnace where we're draining out. And we have a bag with a bunch of hose clamps on it. And we're going to be using 2 of those. So we have a large red clamp here, and we're going to be using that to clamp our hose to our trap there. So I'm just going to run it right over the top of this. I'm going to take the channel locks, I'm going to squeeze down on that clamp. I'm going to put this hose right on there. All right. And so now we're on there nice and tight. All right, and our water, once this trap fills, the water is going to overflow down this black tubing. Now we don't need to put any P-traps or anything else in here because this is already a trap. So it's just a straight run right out of the unit. So this is our knockout here down in the corner of the furnace. We're going to take this piece and we're going to feed it right in the side here. and this is where we're going to hook our hose up. So we're just going to take 2 screws and screw this piece onto the furnace casing itself. So now our fitting is secure on the furnace, it's not going anywhere. And we're going to take our tube, we're going to cut it to the right length, right about there. There's a gold clamp in here, and that's the right one for this tubing. I'm going to clamp that right onto the fitting. Sure, it's on there nice and tight. And there we have it. We have our drain coming from our trap, going down into our fitting out the side of the furnace, as you can maybe see right there. So now we're just going to take some PVC and we're going to run from this fitting right down into the condensate pump. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a T, I'm going to put it right on there, and I'm going to run straight down into the condensate pump. Now what I like to do with this PVC is, you can see there's a flat edge on the PVC where it's cut. I like to cut an angle into it, so when it sits in the condensate pump, there's no chance of it sitting flat on the bottom of the pump and blocking the opening up, and the water will back up into the furnace and it'll shut it down. So I put that on there so that can't happen. So that side goes down into the condensate pump. Put some primer on that black fitting. Primer inside my T. And I'm going to just go ahead and glue it in. Alright, so now we got our drain coming out for the furnace, going straight down into the condensate pump. Now I'm just going to run up and into the drain line for the A coil. Alright, so now we got our drain line from our coil going down. It's teeing off into the condensate that's going to be coming out for the furnace, and everything goes right down into the pump. And our pump, the cord, we got it plugged in here to the outlet that we put in. We're going to strap this down so it's not hanging out there, and then we're going to start connecting the flue pipes. Now we're doing our exhaust. All right, this is our inducer motor down here. This is where our exhaust goes out. So I'm going to go ahead and put primer on here. Both sides. So what this primer does, this primer inside here. So what this primer does, it not only cleans off the surface, but it almost starts to melt the plastic, so that when you put it in there, it like fuses it together. There, a little twist. Furnace. There we go. Alright, so got our exhaust in. Now we got to do our fresh air. I would have liked to come straight down with it to make it look all nice and neat, but we got copper in the way up here, so we have to offset it a little. So I'm just going to kind of size it up. So right there, I want to get a measurement one. Make it 3.5. So what we're doing here is we're measuring from the bell to the other bell in here. So it's not just a distance here, it's actually inside the fittings all the way. So we got 3 inches there. I'm going to have him cut that. Then we'll take another measurement here into a coupling that goes into our fresh air intake. 3.5. Yep. And while he's doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a marker and I'm going to put dots where it lines up, because I have to take this apart and put primer and everything on it, and I want to make sure it lines up properly when I put it back. So I'm going to do a little black mark on the pipe there, a little black mark on the fitting, and then I'll do the same thing here, these 2 fittings, so I know when I glue and primer it all back up how to line it up. Those dots are going to be my guide to make sure everything's the right way. Because once these things are glued together, they don't come apart. And if it's not perfect angle, it's going to suck. You got to do it all over again. So make sure my dots line up so I got the right angle. A little bit of a twist on it. There we go. Go ahead, primer inside the fitting. Line my dots up. Alright, now we just need to get right there, 3 inches. Alright, that's it. We're done with that, and I think we're done installing it. So what we're going to do now is I have Juan going upstairs. He's going to turn the breaker back on, and he's going to set the thermostat to call for heat, and I'm going to do what's called a temperature rise test. So basically what I'm doing, I'm going to take my probes. I have UEI probes here. They're wireless, but you can do this with a regular thermometer. So I'm just going to take one probe, and I'm going to put it up in the ductwork above the furnace. And that's going to take my temperature of the heat coming out of the furnace. I'm going to take my other probe here, and I'm going to get a temperature reading down here by the return. And this is the air coming back in from the house to the furnace to get heated up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the temperature difference between these two temperatures, and inside the furnace there is a sticker telling me what that temperature differential should be. So for this particular unit, it's between 35 and 65 degrees. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a temperature difference between these two probes to be within that 35 to 65 range. And that will tell me that this unit is getting proper airflow, and it's getting off on the right foot right from day one. So our Nest thermostat's powered up. It's called for heat. We can hear the inducer motor just turned on, and we're going to wait for this to fire up. So I'm going to pull out my phone. These UEI probes have an app on my phone. I just download it, and that will tell me the temperatures that I'm getting between these two probes. The furnace has been running about 5 minutes now, where we have about 115 degrees on our heat coming out of our furnace, and we have 73 degrees heat coming in. So that's given us a difference of about 52, 53 degrees, which is in that 35 to 65. So we're good, we're all set, and that's it, we're done. I'm Jersey Mike. That's how you install a 90% furnace. Thanks for watching.